Oh,
Okay, I'm pretty sure we're good, guys. If you want to go ahead and get started, David, let's roll.
all right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Small Market Sessions. We're really excited today. We got a special guest with us. Um, Name is Rose Marie Smith. She is a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, and I'm sure everybody on the call really thanks you for your service to our country. She is a lease option specialist. Now, we've had a lot of guests on the show, and I don't think we've had anybody that really has been focused on lease options. And lease options have been around a long time, and I really like lease options. I like them just like I do installment sales contracts. So, this is going to be a really interesting call. Also, she's done some creative to Airbnb type properties, which is kind of nice, kind of like a sandwich type deal. So, without further ado, I present to you Rosemary Smith. And Rose, just go ahead and kind of give us your story and how you got started.
Sure. Thank you again. Just thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it, both Coach and Travis. Um, so whenever I started, I bought my first house in 2022. I wouldn't consider myself an investor or anything like that. I guess I kind of did a lease option without realizing what a lease option was because I rented the house for a couple years before I finally committed to buying it. Um, it was nice. I bought that one from a friend. And in 2024, I ended up purchasing my second house. I went to a conference. It was a real estate investing conference, very high level, but they introduced the concepts of wholesaling, creative finance, long-term, short-term rentals. And there were just so many people in the room who didn't really have a path forward to buy a house. And I was like, wait a minute, I do have this opportunity with because I was still active duty at the time.
Mhm.
So I used my VA loan and I bought a 4 bedroom house. It's a 4 bed, 3.5 bath. I'm in it now. And I thought, well, I'll just rent out the other 3 rooms and that'll just help cover the mortgage. And then I'll just, be paying very little each month. And guys, I was so bad at finding roommates. Like I put it on Facebook, Craigslist, everywhere. And everyone wanted to have 2, maybe 3 roommates, but they didn't want to have anything more. So I couldn't find roommates. So then here I am just kind of praying like, okay, I'm gonna put this thing on Airbnb, just see what happens. And it just blew up. I started renting out the rooms at $50 a night. It stayed 90% occupied. So it paid the mortgage and then I put another bedroom in it. And that was whenever I kind of had like my first light bulb moment because then I was getting paid $1,000, $1,500 a month to live in my own house. Um, so that was when I started investing, when I saw that was possible on accident. And then at that point, I started to just look for deals. I started to learn everything I could about creative finance. And 8 months later, I bought another property, a bigger property, did the same thing. And then I did a seller finance deal for someone who owned a property free and clear. So they were able to make more money over time than if they would have sold with a realtor. And then I'd say last fall was whenever I really transitioned to doing lease options. And that's where I put the blinders on and where I focus in on now.
Yeah, that's really interesting that how you came about the Airbnb and leasing out rooms in your house. That's that's pretty good. So you basically took something that maybe you would have maybe one roommate and gotten $400 or $500 a month out of it, and you turned it into something you're getting 1,000 a month,
Yeah,
right?
in this area, the roommates they'd pay about 700, 800 a room. But if you're on Airbnb, I was able to bring like 13 to 1,500 for each room.
Wow. Well, that's really good. 13 to 1,500. Yeah, I like that. Now that's some house hacking right there.
It was.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about, duplexes and having, 2 and 3 units and living in one around the other two, but that's definitely a new twist on it. So, Uh, is there any particular background that the people come from that are renting the rooms from you? Do you see any similarities or anything like that? I'm just curious, you know.
In this area, I apologize, all the lights changing because I'm in like a basement room, so that's just the sun
That's
right
okay.
there. But in this area, I'm about 15 minutes from three different colleges, and John Hopkins is a hospital that a lot of people travel to from all across the country. So I think it's a lot of parents visiting their kids and nurses and treatment.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, to get that kind of money and to be, I knew there had to be some drivers, maybe a military base or, uh, you know, colleges, universities, something like that, hospitals that would drive that those room rates and that much demand. So yeah, that's great. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have some properties, and that may kind of open their mind a little bit to that.
Yeah,
So
well, I was really think of Airbnb as the entire house, but you can get away with per room in that business model if you wanted to.
yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I see a lot of that on Airbnb. One time we rented a place in Colorado, and it was on a farm. They had a working farm, and and we weren't real familiar with it the way we did, but we rented the house. But what we did, the owners lived in the basement, and they had like a walkout basement, and so they rented it was just her and her husband, and they rented this old farmhouse, and it was a beautiful big house, and they lived in the basement, and they ran a working farm and had cattle and alpacas and our kids were younger and they they had these big giant Pyrenees dogs that were great and so it was a great experience and it was a great experience for my kids and so yeah, that was the first time that I had really seen that in Airbnb and that was many years ago so uh, definitely a wise way to go for sure. So, tell me more about your focus on lease options. I mean, what kind of got you into lease options and what are you doing right now with them?
Sure. So, the past couple of deals, I've actually been sandwiching my way into these lease options. For those who need a little bit of clarity for what a lease option is, it's a there's two contracts involved. You have a residential lease that looks very similar to your typical 12-month lease, and then you have an option to purchase agreement as well. And so, what takes place is actually your residential lease, maybe for a longer period of time, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years, and then your option to purchase will say any time within that 2 to 3 year period, you have the rights to purchase this house at preset terms. And so I got into lease options because I saw a lot of my friends, a lot of us buy houses with VA loans. So you put 0% down, we have no equity in them. In fact, the first year you're a little upside down in them with nothing down. And then I guess whenever you go to sell, you can't. Um, I mean, a $300,000 house with 3% agent commissions on each side, that's $30,000. So a lot of people felt they were just stuck with these homes. They'd have to rent them. They may even lose money on them each month after paying for property management. So lease options kind of gave them the opportunity to pay or to receive market or even above market rents and lock in a purchase price that is higher than today's purchase price because you could account for future appreciation. And then you also just eliminated the need for realtor commissions.
Okay, so basically, you do a lease with an option to purchase
Yes,
from the actual sellers,
I do.
right? Okay, and then you turn around and what do you do on the back end? Do you just rent it or do you sell it with creative?
So there's a few different ways to do it. The last two, I have sandwiched my way into them because there was enough cash flow. So the rental price that I locked up with the seller, if it's 300 or more than what I could pull from the tenant buyer, then I'd rather just wedge myself into the deal. Um, but in the event that there's really not much cash flow in it, then I'll actually just look to assign that contract to someone else who would like to sandwich or do something creative like you're describing.
Okay. Okay. So you're assigning the lease option. to someone for a specified amount, right?
These last two I have not. I'm actually
You,
holding onto them. There's an A to B and a B to C contract, and I'm playing B in both.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So you're doing it both ways. You're either assigning or if there's more than $300 a month cash flow, you're trying to stay in the deal and
Yeah.
just sandwich. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that's sometimes it gets confusing, particularly for our audience. Some of them are newer in the business. They've never heard of lease options or ever done a lease option. So
Mhm.
uh, I think they're a great way to do business. And they're well understood and nobody really has a problem with lease options. Sometimes you get into sub two contracts and you get into a lot of legalese and a lot of different things can happen in the sub two. So lease options, I feel like that makes the deal cleaner.
I do as well. I talked to it's usually the people who have issues with them, they're the other investors because they claim that they cannot actually they're not taking immediate ownership of the property, so they don't get to write off depreciation and things of that nature. But it's in my opinion, I just think it's much cleaner for a seller. It's a lot easier to evict someone than it is to foreclose on them and
Mhm.
try to undo all of your deed and your titling.
Yeah, yeah. It's a much simpler, easier way to get into deals.
Mhm.
And that was the first deal I got into. I got into it with, just that way with the lease with an option to purchase. And I think I done a 1 year option to purchase at a set price, and I agreed to pay her lease payments for so long. And then I went in and invested my own money and time and done some work to the house, and then turned around and sold it. And I think I made $10,000, and this was in '99. And I thought I was the man. Yeah. I was
No,
like,
you are. You are
this
for
is
sure.
yeah, this is the greatest thing ever, man. I can't believe I just pulled that off.
Yeah.
I ordered a course, I said online, but it wasn't online. I ordered a course and got it in, read it and put it into action and it worked. I'm like, so uh so that was kind of my beginning as well in the lease option world. And
Yeah, there's so many opportunities in lease options. I mean, it doesn't, it could be a slow flip like you're describing, something you could put some sweat equity into, or it could be something that's already fixed up and maybe it's just in a really good appreciating market.
right, right. Now when you do your lease options, do you record them or no?
So I put in the option to purchase agreement, there is the right to record a memorandum of option. So yes.
Okay. Yeah, lots of times what I've found when if you try to sell a lease option or even a land contract, if you don't have it recorded before the title companies or anybody will do the deal, if you're they want you to record it
Hmm.
so they can show, you know, chain title. So yeah, okay. Well, I mean, so what are you trying to do now with lease options? I mean, how are you finding your customers? I mean, what are you doing? How you putting yourself out there to find these deals?
So this is definitely a shortfall of mine. I've been getting out just through word of mouth, because as I help one military person, they end up telling another one, and so then folks realize that they have an option. They don't have to be stuck with a piece of property. But one thing that would have really helped would have been to work on building out a YouTube channel to build out the social media presence. Because right now, because I didn't do a good job of actually laying out a good foundation for people, people hear all the benefits, but my calendar, it now gets clogged with a bunch of inquiries and a lot of, for lack of a better word, like brain picking calls, instead of actually being able to like, that's time taken away from talking to actual sellers.
Right, right. Yeah, it's that can happen. I mean, Travis and I get a lot of that sometimes as well. We get a lot of
Yeah.
people, particularly Travis. He gets a ton of calls like that. But yeah, lease option is I tell our listeners, we kind of focus on small market, small operators around the country that's in the smaller towns and areas, and you got to have a lot of tools in your tool belt. And I think lease option is a great one. That it's kind of lost popularity through the years. You don't hear a lot about lease options anymore. It's all. sub two and more creative type stuff like that. But uh, I just recently sold a property that I had a lease option on. It was I had done a lease option with the people. I bought the property, and I'd done a lease with an option to purchase, and I gave them 3 years to do it. And of course, they didn't exercise the option, and time has went on, and they've been there about 8 or 9 years, and then I recently sold it. So to some other people, but anyway, yeah. So uh, I've been using lease options up until this point. So that's why I was really excited when I seen that you done lease options. I'm like, wow, I don't think we've had anybody on that's talked about those. So and and I feel too that people understand lease options a little better. They're easier to explain.
I feel so as well. There's a lot of sub two, there's a lot at stake to, especially on the seller side, to keep their credit on the line for that. And then with lease options as well, whenever you do yours, did you do an option fee up front?
Um, I think I did. I think I done just another month's rent or something up front. I done it back. It was about 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think that's the way I done it. I think I done a security deposit, and then I done another month's worth of the lease for an option consideration, and then I give them 3 years, and we basically set a price at year one, at year two, at year three, or whatever. We set a staggered price as far as that would give them some equity
Hmm.
each of the 3 years. So, um, but yeah, I really feel like people understand them a little better, you know, and it's not as difficult because sometimes in the sub two world, there's a lot of moving parts, and it can get really really difficult really fast sometimes. When people default or payments missed or something's happened or there's credit issues and there's just when you take on a sub two, uh, there's a lot of possibilities there. Another thing with your lease option, I want to ask you about how you're doing them. Um, do you pay the bank directly for
So
the mortgage, or do you pay them?
I will get shared account login. So that way, I'll ask them to change their username and password to something that they don't use on everything else, just so they have peace of mind. But I'll
Right.
go in and make sure that their mortgage gets paid off. And that way, in case the tenant buyer also wants proof that their rent is going towards the mortgage, I could very quickly show them that the payments are up to date without necessarily bothering the seller.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think that's a key point for people that's maybe looking that maybe do one of these is they got to make sure that the people that you take the lease option with are actually paying their mortgage because there's been some incidences where that hasn't happened, and it kind of messes the whole thing up. So, it's like anything else. It's only as good as the people sign it. But um, so do you give your uh, let's say tenant buyer, if you stay in the deal and you do a tenant buyer on the back end, do you give them any rent credit towards the purchase?
I do. So I actually, one thing I do a little bit differently that you're describing, I give them a bigger option fee. So usually my agreement with the seller is typically like 1 month's rent, non-refundable. My agreement with the tenant buyer is 3 months rent. So then 3 to 4 months rent. So then you make money on that piece. But then for every month the tenant pays their rent on time. I also credit them $300 per month off the purchase price. So
Okay.
they're going to get the option fee chunk as well as however many months deducted.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to do it, and it's a fair way to do it.
I
You know.
found that bigger option fee also does a great job of weeding out clients that are applying.
Okay. Do you do any type of background on your tenant buyer if you're doing a sandwich? Do you use like apartments.com or any kind of app or anything to do backgrounds or credits or anything like that?
So I do credit with them. So the first thing before I'll show the house to them is I'll make sure that we get on a phone call or a Zoom and kind of make sure they're a real person. Um, then I gather first and last names to look up for any previous evictions or any court cases that come up. I'd like to know if they have some crazy charges out against them. And then after they see the house, then exactly, I have a pull a credit report and we just kind of go line item by line item and I'll ask questions if I see delayed payments or if a car was recently repossessed, that could be a big red flag for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. So, you can, I feel like you can protect yourself in the lease options as much as possible. You know, have you had to take one back yet or
I
evict a
did.
tenant buyer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had
Yeah, let's hear
Oc-
about that.
October, we had that's kind of why I became so strict on the option fee because it sat on market. It was a little bit of a more rural area, so it was a little bit more challenging. I was also kind of newer, so I didn't market that house as well as I've been doing these recent ones. But they told me they didn't have the option money. They were willing to pay for it in across 3 months, and I told them that's fine as long as you pay on top of your rent as well. And like the second month, they stopped paying. We started getting excuse after excuse, and Maryland is a very tenant-friendly state, so we had to give them the 10-day notice, take them through court, and then eventually they got escorted off by the sheriff. And we found tenant buyers within a week of that, so it wasn't vacant for too long.
Well, that's good. How long start to finish did it take you to get them out?
That one was 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had one. So that one was in Carroll County, but I'll tell you that Baltimore City was actually a lot worse. And that one was almost 5 months.
Mhm. Well, and that's part of what we talk about. There's a lot of great ways to do things in real estate, and there's all kinds of flash, and everybody's out here. They talk about all the good things, but what we've always tried to do is give you the good and give you the bad, and let you know what can happen. And a lot of people sell sub to and owner finance and tough, like, oh, it's just the greatest, and you know generating tens of thousands of, and sometimes there's problems, and you got to be prepared for these problems. So that's why we like to talk about both sides of the coin. And what did you learn from those two evictions that you've had to do? So to give us your, you always learn from getting a black eye. So,
Yes, don't don't get desperate. If someone didn't have the money to meet the requirements of your agreement, like that option fee, I set it up because in case I had to go through an eviction and then I went back on my own plan because in case I had to go through an eviction, I already had 3 months of rent kind of prepaid in a sense that would have held me over. So don't go
right.
back on that. And just on that first one, I skipped looking them up online. So I looked up the spouse, but I didn't look up the other tenant name, and they had a record. So if I actually would have been more diligent on that one would have been caught early as well.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? If if you look at that, like sometimes, and I say this all the time, most counties have a public terminal in their courthouses, in their magistrate courts, or whatever they call it in everybody's area, and you can go in and you can look people up,
Hmm.
and it'll give you anything that's been filed, you know, evictions, any of that stuff as well in your local county, and it's free. At least it is in West Virginia.
It is in
And
Maryland as well. It's an online database. I could just search first and last name.
okay, yeah, yeah. And you try to, if you have two tenants, you try to search the maiden names as well. I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah,
You get married, everything, but I like to search both
right.
because sometimes you can find a little history that way as well. But yeah, yeah. I mean, that's part of the rental business. That's part of the creative finance business. I mean, this business would be absolutely fantastic if everybody paid and done what they said they were going to do. Wouldn't it be just a great business? I mean,
It would. Everyone should get into real estate.
yeah, but not everybody does what they say they're going to do, and uh, unfortunately, that's a reality of real estate. So, you know, but if you're prepared for it, and you know the pitfalls and the bear traps, as I call them, that you step in, and I've stepped in them all, and through over the last 25 years. So that's why Travis and I lots of times we try to put this stuff out there and kind of be mentors to people and talk to them about here is some problems. We're not busting your bubble. We're telling you be prepared for these things and take precautions, and things will work out a lot better for you instead of sometimes you just got to learn them. You learn them the hard way, and I learned them the hard way. I stepped in all these and got blindsided and sideswiped, and it was just the lessons learned have been painful and cost a lot of money, but you know uh, wouldn't change it for anything. So now when I do any kind of a creative deal, I've got all guards up. And the biggest one is this. I don't, gosh, I don't have all the option money. Can I make payments on it? On the option money, like I know you want 3,000 down, but I'll give you 1,500, then I'll pay you 500 a month for 3 months to, yeah, no,
Yeah.
they're not going to pay you. you know. And I used to get that with security deposits as a landlord. Well, I don't have that 600, but I can pay you, I can pay you 3 months at 200. And no, no, they're not. So if they can't come up with the option or they can't come up with the security, you're probably better served to move on. If they can't afford it up front, they're not going to be able to afford it over the long haul. So but yeah, great stuff, and I really I get excited about creative finance. That's kind of my jam. So you know, but Travis, I'll let you go. I've been talking for 30 minutes here. You
I'm learning. I'm a student to the game when you two are talking about lease options and sandwiches. I was getting hungry for a second again, talking about sandwiches. No, but hey, Rose, like this is great. I've told you from the time we first met, like I've been impressed just from, you coming from, because you didn't really say like, oh, well, I want to be an investor and just like it was a little different your story. That's why I like it. We met through Claude Diamond. Um, so I'm curious to know your experience. Like, what are you looking for? Like, why did you go to Claude for sales? Like, have you had a problem with talking with sellers and talking with people? Can we talk about that fear that a lot of us have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking to people was horrifying, and you just get rejected like time and time again, and um eventually I started like kind of shutting down and stop making stop making calls, and then turned to start networking with people I already knew because that was easier. But I mean, Claude's been a game changer as far as the way that he teaches you to approach a situation and kind of how to uncover the problems that people are facing, because we can't even prescribe a solution or an offer that makes sense to them without understanding what their concerns are right now.
Yeah, that's so true. How do we do that, Rose? Like if I'm a seller and you're on the phone with me and how are you introducing yourself and how are you trying to not pull it out of them but get them to open up to you?
Sure. So, first of all, I'm trying to establish some common ground with them. So, um, a lot of times I'm actually calling properties that are sitting for rent for a while, and I know the chances are they've probably got a mortgage that they're trying to pay underneath that. And so just having a conversation with them like, hey, if I take over this property, if I start renting it next month from you, would you be even open to selling it to me in the next 2 to 3 years?
That's good stuff. So what are some signs? Like when you're on the phone with somebody, like what are certain like do you have certain like hot words or keywords like you might hear or certain things people might say that makes you say like this person might be someone to continue the conversation with versus firing them and getting them off of your phone?
Um, I don't know. It seems natural, like the conversation will just flow, or they'll be very short with me. But if they just seem to continue to ask questions, I know they're probably getting a little closer to a yes if they were even sparking their curiosity a little bit. Um, a lot the dead giveaways, if they tell you like, yeah, I think this could work out. I mean, this is new to me, so I got to research it. That's a dead giveaway. But Um, I think the biggest one, a lot of people, whenever they're listing a property for rent, they're not even thinking about selling. So it catches them so off guard whenever I even throw that lease option or offer option to purchase out there. And so then I'll kind of hit them with a, hey, like again, we don't have to make a decision today, but imagine 3, 5 years down the road, do you see yourself living in this property or do you think you're gonna let go? And then that's usually when they tell you, like, yeah, we're gonna move. And then it's just you kind of work backwards from that because they've already alluded to the fact this isn't their forever home. So this is already a good lease option potential, but you just kind of gotta like finesse your way to get to where you want to go.
No, that makes sense. I like it a lot. So you're just going on Zillow or looking for rent signs? Like, where are you finding these older listings?
Um, I haven't honestly had a lot of luck with Zillow. Um, in fact, like my better luck has come from Facebook or Craigslist because I found just a lot of stuff on Zillow as agent listed. And then the agents, even though agents are very, some of them just kind of get a little bit of tunnel vision and they think they can only make money through their agent commissions. So whenever I tell them, hey, I'd be interested in renting this house and buying it down the road, they immediately think they're not going to get paid. They're getting cut out of the deal. Um, so as much as I've tried to have the conversations with agents that if you present this offer to them and they want to move forward, I'd bring you on as a partner in the deal and split the option money with you and split the cash flow with you. And I think that's just, they seem to think they just can't do that. That's not allowed.
Yeah, David knows about all agents, and he's came from that background for a while. And I understand where they're coming from. Like, if I don't think I'm going to get paid off of this listing, I don't want to deal with you either. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. If you're wasting my time, so I get it. Um, so you mentioned something earlier about your network. Like utilizing that network instead of doing a bunch of cold calls. Can we talk a little bit about that? I like that a lot. Because we do that.
Yeah, I mean, you never know where your network is going to come from. So I met the first lease option deal that I did. It was actually another guy I met at church. We were in like the same small group. So after Bible study, you end up talking about real estate and just pitching this idea that if you sold right now, your house is worth 335,000. You bought at 305. You've got, the 30 grand of equity is going to go straight to agent commissions. Um, so I guess like after helping Kyle out, he ends up telling other people. So then I've just had more interest. It's been more so on the military side because they all use the 0% down VA loans. But I've tried to express to people that it could work regardless of equity, as long as they're willing to just delay a sale so they can make more money down the road.
No, that's awesome. So your network's definitely your net worth. Is that your main thing right now? Like, instead of like spending a bunch of money on advertising and cold calling thousands of people and getting hung up on, like, are you focused mainly on building your relationships in the next 12 months and building that YouTube channel? Because I seen you started one.
I
So
know. I've been dropping the ball and posted in there. Uh, I did start a YouTube channel. I need to start posting in there every week. I'm sorry, my phone camera's being silly right now. There we go. Um, but exactly. I'm gonna continue networking like through church, through small groups. On the weekends, I'm a skydiving instructor, so then I'm always networking with skydivers, and you never know who's jumping out of planes. Some of them are pretty set and already have a portfolio built out, and so they're good candidates for this as well.
that's good. Do you want to do this, like, now that you're not active, you're doing a lot of things, obviously, but do you want to do this? Like, is this completely full time now? How are you harmonizing that in your life?
Um, I would say real estate, it's becoming pretty full time, like part to full time. Whenever I'm not at the drop zone, I'm usually making phone calls or following up with people about real estate deals. I'm always getting leads sent to my inbox, but a lot of them, I'm still trying to educate folks that I'm not necessarily looking for cash deals. So please send me the cash deals that aren't penciling or you can't get rid of so I could make a different type of offer on them.
So, you have different strategy, but you're kind of like a one trick pony with the, like, you don't want to do cash at all. Like, you're not transacting at all in any cash deals, even on wholesaling, just creative.
Yeah, only creative. And I'm not even necessarily I was explained earlier on that I've done one seller finance deal. And I mean, that's very fortunate that the buyer has been paying consistently on that and had the money to put down up front. But even seller finance, I'm not a huge fan of. It's almost like sub two in a way. It's a lot of dependencies on it working out and then trying to get trying to foreclose on a house in order to change ownership again. And I'd really rather stick in lease options because I could control these properties without owning them.
I love that you have just found what you wanted, what you're comfortable with, what you like. And, there's a lot of shiny objects out here, but you just stay focused. I think that that's important because we say that a lot, how it's about one focus. And I find myself staying unfocused on a bunch of other things. And I have to remind myself. So it's good hearing you talk about that and reconfirming that, that's what it's all about. This is a simple business. It's so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. It's just pick that one thing, find your structure, your formula, how you're going to find these leads, and then again, talk to people. You don't have to be the best salesman. You don't have to pressure people. Just talk to people and get to know them. And then if you have a good conversation, it's a smooth conversation, give them an offer.
Right.
Make sure you give them an offer. I love that so much. So what's the next 6 months look like for you?
The next 6 months, I really need to get over the mental hurdle of building out social media. Really need to buckle down and start making that YouTube content and educating folks on lease options so that hopefully the calls that do get booked on my calendar, less of them are going towards trying to understand structure and protection because I could just give all that as freebie information to the community, whoever wants to dial in, and then I could just focus more time on the seller side. And I think with lease options, regardless of what market you're in, there's always going to be people who feel like they're just trapped as renting forever. So I don't think your shortage is ever going to be on the buyer side. It's almost always going to be on the seller side. So you really need to focus your efforts on that piece.
No, that's you're so good at this stuff. I know you were very nervous. You said you weren't, but you kept saying you was gonna make a fool. Man, we make a fool out of ourselves every week. So you did great. So, 6 months is looking strong for you. If somebody has a deal for you, what markets are you mainly focused on? Like if somebody has something in West Virginia, are you still looking at it or are you just
Yeah.
honed in on one area?
No, I'm pretty open to doing these wherever as long as I could have boots on the ground. Like I'd like someone to actually go walk the property. I don't necessarily want to even structure a deal without at least getting a video walkthrough of the house. But I think I would just because again with lease options, I'm not necessarily immediately owning the asset. I'm essentially controlling it. And down the road, I may actually end up buying it for myself. But I think regardless of location, just because the nature of the strategy, I would still entertain it right now.
Oh, that's brave. You're brave out here. You're gonna buy in all these different areas. I feel for you. You're gonna have so much stuff happen, but it's what it's about, right? Taking that massive imperfect action and saying, you know what, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to do it. And because we can tell you all day long, like, that's why a lot of people don't want to tell you guys on that's watching like that the hard stuff because we don't want to unmotivate you to do it. Because, it will be hard, like for Rose to manage properties, or even though she's not technically, still, it's going to be difficult at times if she picks up a property in West Virginia and she's never been there, but she's going to do it because she set her mind to it. So we don't want to unmotivate you guys when we tell you how hard it's going to be, but it is going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. Every day I think to myself, like, man, this isn't easy, you know? Um, but okay, so where can they contact you if they have a good deal for you? And do you want it already under contract, or can they contact you if it's not under contract yet and you can help them through it? Or is that too much of like brain picking?
I'd actually prefer they don't have it under contract because in a sense, like if it's not negotiated properly, I do need it to be negotiated to a point that if we were to sandwich lease it, there needs to be enough of a buffer between what's between us and the seller and what's between us and the buyer. So if someone has even an opportunity where the seller is open to that idea of running the house now with the and selling it down the road in the next couple years, it needs to, I won't do a 1 year lease. I do want at least two, preferably at least 3 year leases, but I'll go as short as 2 year. And email is probably the best because I'm able to stay organized in that. It gets messy when people start to send me stuff on Facebook Messenger.
Doesn't it? Gosh, it's so unorganized on Facebook Messenger. Facebook's a great way to connect with people. It really is. So we'll put your email in the notes, but do you want to give it to us just out
Absolutely.
loud?
Sure. So my email is rose@therosemarysmith.com.
Awesome. That's great. So, are you also teaching this stuff to people? From your experience, are you coaching yet?
Yeah, so whenever I do coach people, I coach them one-on-one. I'm not a big fan of holding like big group sessions and because I think if you want to learn how to do lease options, everything you want to know is already on YouTube. There's already articles on there. And I think the real value comes in if you have someone who's kind of hand holding you through this process so that as you have a question about a contract, we could get very focused on what your problem is instead of keeping things so generic. Because that's what you have to do. If you're working with a big group of people, you have to be very broad. So it applies to everyone. So I do rather I keep it small.
I understand that. So, before we go, speaking of mentorships, things like that, like what has your experience so far been with mentors and how have they helped you?
Yeah, so Claude Diamond, the one that you'd already mentioned, he's the one that really shifted my thought on that because prior to Claude, I had joined three other mentorships.
Yeah.
I spent way too much on those together, but um, I didn't find value in them. There are a lot of people who are chasing deals, and I think because everyone was so hard to get their first or trying so hard to get their first deal, there's like a level of maybe scarcity or people just not taking action and everyone's kind of like clawing at the same bits. So I think one-on-one mentorship, like everything that's like under three or less people, it could be very valuable because it's just really tailored to what you're going through.
Do you find that a good mentor, like you got to connect with, like, what is the difference between, let's say, Claude, right, versus the other guys and girls we won't name at all? Like, what are the difference what can you expect out of someone who's really there to help you?
I mean, whenever I work with Claude, I text Claude like I'm getting a hold of Claude.
Yeah.
Whenever I join the sub two community or any other community, you're getting a hold of their assistants or maybe people who have already done some deals, but there's so many other students who are trying to reach that same person that you are not getting any detailed attention. It's really hard to move the needle forward. Um, I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you think you're busy, like you think you're being productive because they give you a lot of videos and you go and you just absorb a lot more info, but then you still don't take any action. And then it's almost a compounding effect because then analysis paralysis really starts to set in because you know probably more than you should, but steps 7, 8, but you haven't taken step 2.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Because I've invested so much time and money into courses and programs in the last 8 years, and I'm just thinking to myself, when I look back, how many of these people actually cared enough to spend some time with me, figure out what my real problems are, versus just give me a login code and a T-shirt, a welcome T-shirt, and oh, I'm a part of the community. So yeah, yeah. you want to find somebody who cares, who has been through it, who's active, in my opinion, who's actively doing what you want to do, not somebody who did it, you know, a long time ago, who's still doing it,
Right.
right? So that's cool. It was a pleasure to have you today. David, do you have anything else that you want to discuss before we go? You have any other questions or anything you want to go over? I think you're muted.
Sorry,
There you
clicked
go.
the wrong button.
Oh,
No, no, this lease option stuff, like I say, it's a great way, and I think it's a good way, as Rose said, to get started in creative finance because I think it's the simplest form of creative finance. It's the easiest and it's easy for a beginner to explain what's happening, and homeowners and different people they understand the 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 mechanics of it versus a sub two deal, which is very mechanical. I mean, people can preach what they want in sub two, but it's very mechanical, and there's a lot of moving parts, you know, in that type of deal. So installment land contracts, if they're legal in your state, and lease options are definitely the things that I've done incredibly well with over the last 25, 30 years is those two instruments. And I have done sub twos, but I'll tell you, I've done, probably 10 to 1 installment land and lease option, over sub two, and haven't had any trouble through the years, other than the normal collections and people not paying or not doing what they're supposed to do. But, if you're going to be in this business, it comes with territory. So just be prepared for it. But no, outside of that, I think that's it. Rose, we really appreciate you being on the show and talking about lease options. I mean, I think it's great. We've had a ton of guests. Well, not a ton, but we've had a bunch. And you're the first one that we've talked about lease options with. So I was kind of excited to see that was kind of your thing, because that's the way I got started as well. Um, Also, I wanted to remind everybody that if you're in a small market and you like what we're talking about, you like the type of content that we create, we want to invite you to join our Facebook group, which is Small Market Real Estate Investing. So, just come into our group. A lot of good information there. We post and we do a lot of stuff in the group. And so we want to invite you to that. We also want to remind you that we have our small market real estate investing boot camp coming up. The first date for that is June the 2nd. So we're going to close out entries on June the 1st, and we only got a few spots left. So if you're looking for a good way to get started, and you're going to get Travis and I for uh, a couple of days a week, for a month, we're going to be on, and you'll have us kind of there to answer your questions. We're going to be teaching some general basic things, and then we'll be available for you to ask us questions, and it'll be a private setting, and so there'll just be a limited number of us in there together, and that's $97, which is absolutely nothing in the scheme of things to learn anything about real estate. So we want to remind you about that, and I think uh, I think that's about it. So. Uh, Rose, thank you again on behalf of Travis Goodwin. I'm Coach, and remember, solve a problem, get a payday.